Imagine walking into a room where everyone acknowledges your presence except one person. No insults are spoken, no argument takes place, nothing dramatic happens, yet somehow that silence feels heavier than words ever could. Why? Most people assume influence comes from speaking louder, arguing better, or proving themselves right, but human psychology often works in the opposite direction. What is absent can become more powerful than what is present. A response can satisfy curiosity, but silence leaves the mind searching for answers. When someone openly criticizes us, we know where we stand. Our brain has something concrete to process. We may disagree, defend ourselves, or move on, but being ignored creates uncertainty. The mind dislikes unanswered questions. It begins filling the empty space with assumptions, doubts, and imagined explanations. Did I do something wrong? Why haven't they replied? Have they lost interest? The conversation continues, not with the other person, but inside our own mind. This is why silence can create emotional tension far greater than direct conflict. It shifts attention inward, forcing people to confront uncertainty rather than certainty. The less information they receive, the more their imagination begins to work. But here's the deeper truth. Silence is not automatically a sign of strength. Sometimes it reflects wisdom and emotional discipline. Other times it becomes avoidance or manipulation. The difference lies in intention. In this video, we'll explore the psychology behind strategic absence, why the human mind reacts so strongly to being ignored, and how understanding this invisible force can help you develop greater emotional awareness, not to control others, but to better understand yourself and the people around you. From the day we are born, attention becomes our first experience of value. Before we understand money, success, or status, we learn that being noticed means being cared for. A baby's cry is answered with comfort, food, or protection. Deep within the human mind, this creates a lasting connection between attention and survival. As we grow older, that instinct doesn't disappear, it simply changes its form. Adults no longer cry for attention, but many still search for it in different ways. Some seek praise at work, others chase followers on social media, while some constantly look for approval in their relationships. Beneath these behaviors lies the same psychological desire, the need to feel recognized. Being acknowledged reassures us that we matter, that our presence has value. The problem begins when attention transforms into emotional validation. Instead of appreciating recognition, people begin depending on it. Their confidence rises when others notice them and falls when they are ignored. They stop measuring their worth by their character and start measuring it by the reactions they receive. Over time, this becomes a cycle. Every compliment, every message, every notification provides a brief emotional reward. The brain starts expecting that reward repeatedly, making attention feel less like a pleasure and more like a necessity. This is why many people become addicted to being noticed. They aren't truly chasing admiration, they're chasing the feeling of significance. But genuine confidence is different. It comes from knowing your value even when no one is watching, because real power is built within, not borrowed from the attention of others. Most people believe that the more they are seen, the more they will be valued. They assume that constant messages, constant explanations, and constant availability will strengthen their relationships and increase their influence. Yet, human psychology often responds in a very different way. What is always available is easily taken for granted, while what becomes temporarily absent often gains greater value in the mind. When someone suddenly disappears, not out of pettiness, but because they are focused on their own life, the mind naturally begins searching for answers. Curiosity replaces certainty. Questions begin to form. Where did they go? Why have they become quiet? Have things changed? The silence creates a psychological gap, and the human brain dislikes empty spaces. Rather than accepting uncertainty, it instinctively tries to fill that gap with its own assumptions. This is why chasing rarely creates intrigue. When every thought is shared immediately and every message receives an instant reply, there is little room for anticipation. The mind has nothing left to discover. But when someone values their own time and isn't constantly seeking attention, they naturally become more interesting. Their absence invites reflection instead of predictability. However, strategic absence should never be confused with manipulation. It is not about ignoring people to provoke a reaction or playing emotional games. It is about living a life that is not dependent on constant validation or availability. True mystery comes from having purpose beyond other people's opinions. The strongest presence often belongs to the person who doesn't feel the need to constantly prove they exist. Silence, when supported by confidence and self-respect, speaks louder than endless explanations ever could. One of the most fascinating aspects of human psychology is that silence rarely ends a conversation. It simply moves it from the outside world to the inside of the mind. When people don't receive an explanation, a response, or a reaction, they naturally begin creating one for themselves. The dialogue continues, but now it happens entirely in their imagination. Imagine sending an important message and receiving no reply. At first, you may assume the other person is busy, but as time passes, your mind starts searching for answers. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Have they lost interest? Notice that none of these questions are based on facts. They are created by uncertainty, and uncertainty is something the human brain struggles to tolerate. The mind is designed to complete unfinished stories. When information is missing, it fills the empty space with assumptions, memories, fears, or hopes. This is why two people can experience the exact same silence but interpret it completely differently. One may believe everything is fine while the other imagines rejection or conflict. The silence itself has not changed, only the story inside their mind has. As uncertainty grows, emotions become stronger. Doubt turns into anxiety. Curiosity becomes obsession. A simple lack of information can feel far more emotionally intense than an uncomfortable truth. This doesn't mean silence is always the right response. Sometimes honest communication is the healthier choice. But understanding this psychological pattern reveals an important truth. People are often influenced less by what is said and more by the meaning they create in the absence of words. That invisible conversation can become more powerful than any spoken one. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of human behavior. Some people use it as a sign of maturity, while others use it as a weapon. From the outside, both may look identical, but their intentions and their outcomes are completely different. This is where the line between power and manipulation begins. True emotional control is not about making other people suffer. It is about refusing to let your emotions control your actions. When someone insults you, disappoints you, or tries to provoke you, your first impulse may be to react immediately, but genuine strength lies in choosing your response instead of becoming a prisoner of your emotions. Sometimes silence is simply the decision to protect your peace rather than fuel unnecessary conflict. Manipulation, however, has a different purpose. It uses silence to create guilt, anxiety, or confusion in order to gain control over another person's emotions. Instead of seeking peace, it seeks power over others. The goal is no longer emotional discipline, it is emotional influence through discomfort. Confidence speaks through calmness. An emotionally secure person does not feel the need to explain every decision, defend every criticism, or respond to every challenge. Their silence reflects self-respect, not fear. Insecurity, on the other hand, often hides behind silence as well. Some people avoid difficult conversations because they fear rejection, confrontation, or vulnerability. Their silence is not strength, it is escape. The lesson is simple. The same action can carry two completely different meanings. Silence becomes powerful only when it is guided by wisdom, emotional stability, and purpose. Without those qualities, it is merely avoidance disguised as confidence. Influence is rarely lost in one dramatic moment. More often, it disappears through a series of small habits that people mistake for honesty or kindness. Without realizing it, they give away their confidence one reaction at a time. One of the biggest mistakes is over-explaining. When every decision requires a long justification, it can signal uncertainty rather than confidence. People who trust their choices usually explain only what is necessary. They understand that not every opinion deserves a defense. The more desperately someone tries to convince everyone, the more they reveal their need for approval. Another common habit is over-texting. Sending message after message without receiving a response often shifts the balance of a conversation. Instead of communicating calmly, it communicates impatience. It tells others that your emotional state depends on their reply. The strongest communicators know that clarity matters more than constant contact. Seeking validation creates another hidden weakness. When every achievement is shared only to receive praise, confidence becomes dependent on outside approval. The opinions of others begin to control self-worth, making criticism feel unbearable and silence feel like rejection. Perhaps the greatest mistake is reacting emotionally to every challenge. Not every insult deserves an answer. Not every disagreement requires a battle. Every emotional reaction reveals what has the power to disturb you. Real influence comes from emotional stability, not emotional intensity. It belongs to the person who can remain calm under pressure, speak with intention, and walk away when necessary. The moment you stop chasing approval and stop reacting to every situation, you regain something far more valuable than attention. You regain control over yourself, and that is where lasting influence truly begins. At the heart of every psychological struggle lies one question: who controls your emotions? If your peace depends on someone else's attention, approval, or response, then your emotional state has already been placed in another person's hands. That is the opposite of freedom. Real power is not the ability to make people chase you. It is the ability to remain steady whether they do or not. Emotional independence begins the moment your self-worth is no longer measured by who notices you, who agrees with you, or who chooses to stay. When your confidence is built from within, silence no longer feels like rejection, and absence no longer feels like loss. This is why ignoring people should never come from pride or revenge. Silence used to punish others eventually becomes another form of emotional dependence because your actions are still controlled by their behavior. But silence chosen with purpose is different. It creates space for reflection, protects your peace, and reminds you that not every situation deserves your energy. People rarely remember those who constantly demanded attention. They remember those who carried themselves with quiet confidence, spoke with intention, and never felt the need to prove their worth. Presence is not created by being everywhere, it is created by having depth wherever you are. The greatest victory is not influencing another person's mind. It is mastering your own. The moment you stop chasing validation, stop reacting to every distraction, and start protecting your inner peace, you become difficult to manipulate, difficult to provoke, and impossible to control. And that is where true strength begins, not in silence itself, but in the character that gives silence its meaning.